Hello, and welcome to Digital Decode with Qhala. My name is Laura Walubengo, and I'm your host for this podcast, where we'll be diving into anything that has to do with technology in Africa. And the aim of this podcast is for us to be able to decode anything that's happening digitally on the continent. As you know, the future of this continent is steeped in technology, and so you better be listening. What we're trying to do here is make sure that you're enlightened and inspired. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Digital Decode with Qhala, which is your monthly guide through the intricate maze of technology that's making up Africa's digital transformation right now. And on today's episode, we have David Lemayian from Qubit. But before I mess up his introduction, I'll hand it over to him. Hello, David.
Thanks, Laura. As you say, my name is David Lemayian. I work with Qubit, I work with Qhala, helping set up Qubit, which is this catalyst for Africa or AI in Africa. I'm also a founder and principal at Tenery Research, and I'm happy to be here.
So Qubit Qhala, I mean, there's the whole Q going on there, and it's not a very palatable letter for us Kenyans.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about Qhala and a little bit about Qubit within Qhala.
So Qhala was set up by Dr. Shiko Gitao, and the idea with it is that she has worked for many years, just like myself, in the ecosystem, in the Kenyan ecosystem, but also in the Africa ecosystem. And there's a lot to do with being able to build out not only the talent, but also some of the use cases that the continent and the peoples of the continent can use to drive change forward. So Qhala is a Zulu word. I will not remember what it says, but qubit is sort of the smallest representation of what is considered in quantum mechanics a little qubit. It's how then you're able to, and I will not lie to understand quantum mechanics on this podcast, but it's essentially the smallest. It's essentially the atom of quantum mechanics, which is its own other physics. And I think if you watched, what is it called, Ant-Man, and how they move through different dimensions, it's essentially the qubit that is helping them do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
I would never have known that the name Qubit would be broken down for me to understand through the movie.
Yeah.
So in essence, what does the Qubit Hub do?
So what the Qubit Hub does is it works to fulfill this mission of being able to democratize AI on the continent. And it does it in three particular ways. One is research. So being able to understand what are the concepts, what's the thinking, what's the framework around AI on the continent. Number two is convenings, bringing together like-minded people, but also people from different backgrounds into a space to be able to come up with these ideas, but also to be able to speak about what are they seeing in their areas. Everything from human rights activists to journalists to techies, bringing them together and being able to speak, okay, how will AI change? How will AI affect, what I'm doing on a daily basis? And then lastly, pilot projects. These are where we're able to build out open source ideas and bring in collaboration around that, build our own African models that are very much lacking.
I think AI is a bit of a dirty word right now. It's nobody knows what to really think about AI. So if you were explaining it to a 5-year-old, what would you say AI is?
To a 5-year-old? That's an interesting question. I'll start it with this very simple analogy is when you're using a calculator, you're able to do 5 plus 5 and it'll do 10, right? So it's very simple. It's a calculator. You can sort of try and understand how those, electricity is turned into arithmetic, essentially, how you can do addition, subtraction, multiplication. Now, for AI, it's a bit different. It takes those abstractions and applies it to our natural language. It applies it to our natural world in terms of vision, being able to understand and looking in the room and say, hey, this is a microphone that David is speaking through, or this is David who is speaking and not somebody else. And creating certain abstractions also in terms of being able to understand when I am saying a specific word, what am I meaning and what could it predict, what I want to say. So for example, if I ask it the question, hey, when is the grass green? It understands that I'm talking about a specific plant, the grass, and about a specific time. So it might infer then that I'm speaking about summer, I'm speaking about, the rainy seasons, which it is in Nairobi or in Kenya. And it's able to then say, okay, the grass is green, not when you water it, but when it rains in March, in July, in September, whenever it rains in particular areas. So that's what AI is. It's essentially a simple abstraction of when you ask a calculator, 5 plus 5, 10. Now it's able to understand when is the grass green and able to abstract those in much simpler ways.
Wow. So, okay. So what it sounds like
Yeah.
is like AI is this amorphous creature sitting behind, I don't know, a computer or sitting behind a website or sitting behind a door that's basically just waiting to consume your information and regurgitate it in whichever way.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Exactly. And essentially what it does is it even and these are some of the challenges with it, because the kind of information it is being fed is that now it's laden with bias. So for example, if you give it information about the gender or the pay of different people in your company, and that pay has different information. So for example, it has a gender information, it has name information. What the AI will do is it'll be able to now be predictive. So it has, say 1,000 employees and their payments and how much you pay them. What you'll find is that already what happens is that women are paid a lot less than men in many cases. Now, if you ask it, what should I pay Bob in terms of amounts? What it'll do is it'll say, give Bob $3,000. And I'll say, okay, cool. Then I have Jane. What should I pay Jane? Don't give it any other context. I'll give you pay Jane $1,500. And this is a lot of the research that is being shown right now, is that AI is learning from us. It's regurgitating the societal, issues and gaps that we already have, and then sort of making it look smart or automated. It's sort of like a very smart consultant without any of the morals.
So let me take you back a little bit. Why do we have AI in the first place? Like who came up with it? Did it come out of nowhere, or was it like little qubits that come together to create this thing?
Did it just appear? That's a good question. We've always tried to understand how machines learn for a long, long time as humanity and as human race. So yes, we started out with a calculator. We're able to have a calculator that was the size of this room. That was the first calculator. It was massive. And what it used to do was that it was for military application. Now, don't be afraid, AI is right now not for military, but some people might be using it. But it was to be able to calculate the trajectories for military, to be able to understand, if you were to fire a weapon, how far it'll go, be able to now move things. And it's really been evolving since then. But the thing that people have been going after, and this was what it was called the Turing test. This was, I want to say it was in the early 1700s or sometime back then, is how are you able to, and they had asked this question, when will we get to the point where a machine will be able to respond in a way that if you were to ask it questions, you would not know whether it's a human being behind it or an actual machine? Can it be able to be smart enough to answer these questions? And I think we've very much gotten to that, but it's been a long time. It's been happening for a long time.
I still don't get it.
Okay.
Like I think we like to play. No, I
Yeah.
mean I don't get why. I understand the calculator.
Yeah.
That was a very functional
Yeah.
reason. But I guess based on that, then humans got curious.
Yeah.
And then they decided, okay, how do we created something, but how does it work?
Yeah.
But anyway, if you
Yeah.
think about it,
Yeah.
but by the time your fridge is talking to your phone,
Yes.
you know the basics of it, but you don't really know how it
No,
happens.
exactly. How does electricity work?
I don't know.
Right? Electrons and all of that. No, it's very good. Like, what has been the application for it? Industry has been a big driver for it. Being able to automate, a lot of the processes. Yes, unfortunately, so as to be able to reduce the cost of doing those jobs. So literally, machines have been trying to make our life better. That's the idea, right? It's that we might have more time for leisure and more money to do things. In reality, we become slaves to those machines in many cases. We have to maintain them, we have to feed them with electricity. We have to make sure that they don't break down. When they break down, we run helter skelter. M-Pesa is down. We don't understand that. So AI has literally been trying to change the way we do work and how we understand work. And that's been the biggest driver. A lot of the early applications was definitely in industrialization, where those industrial lines could be a lot more safe. Not only that, but also a lot more efficient. So instead of having a human who gets tired, has to take bathroom breaks, it's something that can go for 24 hours and can understand like the intricacies of adding a little knob in a specific section of a specific product. It's then moved on to fraud detection. When you have billions of shillings, as M-Pesa does, per day, you can't have somebody looking at each M-Pesa transaction to understand what is fraud and what is not, or the applications for, applications for loan. Not a single human, and a single human can't do it. So what this does is it allows a human to oversee a machine being able to run through thousands per second, thousands of applications and make decisions. But then, yeah, that's sort of how it became.
Wow. So okay. In a day,
Yeah,
when you, as David Lemayian, wake up and you
brush your teeth.
yeah, even before you brush your teeth,
Uh-huh.
up until the time that you get back to bed.
Yeah.
What are the different examples of AI and their application
Yeah.
that you probably use on a day to day that we do as well, but we don't even think about it?
Yeah. I'll be honest. I'm a bit more techie than your usual. One way I do use AI before I even wake up is my watch is a smartwatch, and what it does is it tracks my sleep, but it also tracks the optimal time for me to wake up. So I'll tell it, hey, I want to wake up around 6:30, 6 a.m. I can program my watch to then be able to tell me, oh, I noticed you were just almost awake at like 6:15. I'll wake you up then. And it'll ring and it'll buzz me and to do that. But all through the night, it's been running and being able to collect my metrics. And what I can do is I can track my sleep cycle and be able to say, okay, what should I have not eaten? What exercises did I do? But again, I am extremely techy. The things that we don't realize is when we then turn over and we say, okay, let me look at my Instagram feed, or I want to look at my Facebook feed. That is AI telling you what is at the top, what is at the bottom, what should you be looking at, what should you not be looking at. It's already understanding what adverts should I be giving Laura? What adverts should I be giving, David or Lama as they are looking at it? Because they're looking at it in the morning, maybe I should give them.
AI would probably call you Lema and not David.
Right? It can know that. And that's how you use it on a daily basis. You need to get around, and you don't even realize it. If you're using Uber, they're using AI behind that. There are many decisions like that are in your life that you don't realize that are being made about your life that are very much AI powered. But even if you are even disconnected from the world, there are satellites that are watching you and being able to do those kinds of predictions and say, okay, the weather is moving this way, and therefore you'll have rain. But then there's now rain seeding that's happening, in the UAE, where they're generating rain clouds using.
Are they using AI to do that?
They're using AI to know when to do it. So it's very interesting.
Why do they need AI for that? So that it doesn't disrupt the rest of the regular climate cycle?
Exactly. And to be able to do a better prediction. So why seed the rain when it's already coming? Or make it even better, be able to say, okay, I can see some of these plants are not doing as great. Maybe I should bring some rain. So China's been doing it for a long time. And UAE
For a long time.
For a long
How
time.
long?
Maybe 10, 15 years, maybe more. We don't know. Officially, we know these are the ones.
I saw a video the other day of Michael Jackson in a concert in 1992.
Yeah.
Flying out of stage.
Okay.
In 1992.
Flying out of
Flying
stage.
out of stage. Like he had, I guess what they use now to, I don't know what those machines are called, but you basically have something strapped in your back and he has
Yes.
these handles and
Yeah.
he didn't go up this way.
Yeah.
Like he went all this way, but still that was 1992.
Yes.
So I guess the possibility was there before.
Yes.
And if you're talking about a computer, a massive room that was a computer
Yes.
that was being used by the military.
Yeah.
So to me, that sounds like AI is a massive toy.
Yeah.
That people who know how to use it
Yeah.
to make their lives easier.
Yes.
So if AI is such a good thing,
Yeah.
why are people so afraid of it?
Oof. Why are we afraid of robots? The Luddites, right?
Are you afraid of robots?
I'm not afraid of robots. I welcome our robot overlords. I think that's the fear is that if for some of the leading sort of voices in the world, say Elon Musk and Sam Altmans, who is like the some of the founders of OpenAI, they're talking about a superhuman AI. This means that this is AI that supersedes our intelligence. They're able to affect every part of our government and our organizations without us ever knowing. They could put us in these very seats without us ever knowing, just by prompts, being able to put the right people in the right place. What happens then? What happens to free will at that point? Now, that's a very, of course, advanced level of AI that the big bosses are worried about. Now, the common mwananchi is most worried about that AI replacing my job. You meet people who are working in business process outsourcing, they're call centers, and they say, we were fired because AI can do a better job than us. What happens then? There are very many, writers of PhD theses, I guess, who have lost their job, copywriters.
Yeah.
So that's a question, people are afraid because their current jobs will be disrupted. And that is a valid fear. Where do you get money?
But considering it's been around for this long, is it going to go anywhere?
Will it go in? Will we take access to these servers and cut them down wherever these servers are? It's a good question. There are people there are researchers who are looking at potential for AI viruses to exist.
AI viruses,
where a virus can be able to shut down entire AI systems and AI models. They can pollute them such that they're not helpful and therefore you don't use them and there's no funding that goes to them. But then there's an even bigger question. AI is right now eating up 10% of electricity in the world. It's a lot of electricity. Just AI alone, these servers. We're going to have to, Elon Musk said that we don't have enough power to be able to keep the pace at which we are building out data centers. Our electricity grid cannot support it across the globe, not just, Europe or the US. Across the globe, the electricity demands from AI and the water demands are going to meet a threshold. Now, the question is going to happen. Is it that AI will become smaller? So meaning that you can use it on your phone instead of having to connect to a chat GPT somewhere? Or is it going to be entirely useless and we're just going to see it as a toy that we then get rid of and discard, and it will be unimportant? So very many different models, but there is an off switch. That off switch is, just the turning down the lights at a data center.
I was about to say hallelujah, but anyway, but okay, I'm gonna sound a bit blonde.
Yeah.
But I've just right now, while you were speaking, realized the difference between AI and OpenAI.
Okay.
So AI has been there, but OpenAI is basically giving everybody in the world access to AI that people in the tech industry have been using for decades.
Yeah.
So the danger is in who is going to use AI for what.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at Africa as a landscape, how would you say, and I understand that this might be a very technical question, but just based on what you think, how would you say we can relate to AI as developers or just as citizens? What is our level of interaction?
Oh, how should we? I guess. So, what is our level of interaction with AI? That's an interesting question. I'm going to pick up on something that you said, the differences between OpenAI and AI, right? In many parts of Africa, you'll find what happened in the early stages of internet adoption is that there was a conflation of Facebook and the internet. In many parts of the continent, they understood the internet is Facebook and Facebook is the internet. Now, what dangers that posed was that Facebook was literally the box through which some of these countries and some of the peoples in these countries were looking at the world. And there were very harmful situations where that happened. For example, in northern Nigeria, where Facebook hadn't placed at the time, now called Meta, enough guardrails to be able to weed out the kind of harmful and toxic rhetoric. So you'd find that there would be a lot of disinformation, hate, and what ended happening was that a lot of people gathered on this Facebook platform, on the internet, to be able to say very bad things about other people, and then went out and did those harmful things to people. Again, driven by the internet. There's that conflation that happens, unfortunately, as well in AI, where ChatGPT will be the AI that we understand. And I think what, as Africa, we need to do is, first of all, be able to delineate everything that is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is not AI everything. There's a lot of other AIs that we are not we're not cognizant about. And these are including facial recognition AI. Now, this, again, our friends in the East, in China, have been using it, of course, to track dissidents and be able to make sure that they can silence voices. They give, a point system. We need to be very aware that AI and some of these digital systems can be used by our very own well-meaning governments to then stifle the kind of free speech that we've enjoyed and the kind of democracy that we've enjoyed so far in some countries, not all countries. But we need to also recognize that there's an opportunity to use it, for example, in robotics, where we are reducing toil for a lot of workers. Here, we're talking about tea farms, not replacing the people who are picking tea, but thinking about it like, what is the unpaid work that is already happening, and how do we remove it from the equation? So for tea farmers, they only get paid for the kgs that they pick. They go out, they pick the two leaves and a bud, right? We all learned that in 4K. They put it in their sack, and then they walk about 30 minutes to an hour to the actual facility. They get weighed, it gets processed, it gets weighed, and then after getting weighed, you are given a ticket, and then you walk over again with that same bag to the processing area, and then you put it there. Now, the thing is, you're only paid per kg of what you bring, but you're not paid for all that amount of work that you're doing to take it all that way. What if we were able to use robotics that can easily find out who is where in very easy forms, you can put your sack on there and you can continue with your day, and it does all the weight and all the processing, and it goes directly into the processing facility. It reduces unpaid work. So that's, I think, the model that we should be thinking about as Africans, is to be able to apply that in different ways and in different sectors, not just in terms of thinking about ChatGPT as one, but being able to think, okay, my shosho at home, what is she doing that is unpaid? What are the works that we're doing at home, or even in our own biasharas, that could be better enhanced, that gives us time to spend time with our families, take a new course, learn a new instrument, as I am, and live a good life.
Okay, so is this part of the work that you do at Qubit, where you come up with examples of the potential of AI in Africa? And if it is, could you? I mean, the T one is pretty interesting. I've even started thinking of if I could get a robot to cook and feed my dogs. But what other examples could you give me? And what are some of the challenges that you think need that sort of input?
Yeah. And this is why I really like what we're trying to do at Qubit is that it's a bringing together of minds. Have a deep technology background, but then we have people who have deep gender background, gender studies background, researchers, and also we're working with people who have deep health and agriculture aspects or backgrounds to them. So here, for example, in terms of being able to understand the use cases, where, for example, trying to understand and to understand how AI can be used in the healthcare sector. Right now, when I was coming, the doctors were, of course, striking, but it's because the current work conditions are very tough. I met this one lady the other day who told me that, in fact, we can reduce the cost of healthcare in many ways with AI. And this particular one way that she is doing is she's bringing in portable X-ray machines. Now, for X-ray, the funniest thing has to happen. You have to have a lab technician who is very qualified, who's sitting in a building that is covered with lead, and it's a massive building like this. It costs upwards of $200,000 to be able to build that. And in Mashinani, that doesn't exist. That money doesn't exist. That talent expertise doesn't exist. But with what this lady is doing is she's able to bring in a portable X-ray that has AI built in and can be able to send this information directly to more qualified staff, but also that qualified staff is able to start at a level playing field. If they're able to be able, already the computer can tell you, hey, look at this lesion. Does this look strange? Does this look weird? They're also able to already give very quick diagnostics. Being able to give quick diagnosis means that they're able to turn around instead of you going and sitting and waiting, 6 hours. I had to do an X-ray recently. I had to sit like 6 hours to wait for my results. This is something that can be done within an hour. That saves a lot of time, and you can have a lot more patients going through. So these are the kind of use cases that we are learning about and exploring with partners to understand, how do we get this in front of the right people, in front of the policymakers to understand, hey, this is not something you want to stop. This is something you want to improve. And this is where we're saying, if you bring in regulation and say, okay, no, we can't use that device until it has gone through X, Y, and Z checks, we'll be 10 years behind when any kind of investment and kind of innovation will be sitting here and we can use that.
Okay, so two things. One, do we have people like you who will know what to do with AI and where to put it? Yeah. And do we have enough policymakers who understand the potential for good and are interested in harnessing that? Or are we just going to work with hearsay?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in our in the paper that we did, we talk about the Brussels effect, right? So this is where a lot of regulation that's coming from the European Union then influencing what Africa is doing and African countries are doing in terms of setting up policy and regulation. Again, that's a very, of course, westernized form of thinking. I'm very glad to say, Laura, that in Kenya and across the continent, there's a very deep understanding that we have to create our policies the way that we understand it. And I just want to give a big shout out again to our special envoy, Ambassador Philip Tigo, who is doing a lot of this advocacy and a lot of speaking around being able to say, hey, let's create policy that responds to the acceleration that we're seeing. It has to be agile. It can't be stagnant. It can't be the way we created policy back then that, you have to give farmers 2,000 shillings or be able to do this kind. You have to move quickly. Right now, we're in an age of acceleration. And fortunately, the policymakers are being responsive to that. I was in a meeting this morning with the Ministry of ICT Ministry of ICT, and they're speaking the same language. They're understanding, hey, we've made certain mistakes in the past. We're not going to repeat it for AI. We want to put in a strategy in place first before we start thinking about how do we curtail, the innovation landscape. And I think one thing we can really appreciate is that specifically, at least for Kenyans, there are a lot of innovators, and we cannot leave them out of this conversation of AI. We just don't need the mathematicians. We need those people who can, again, like you say, apply the AI into the necessary use cases. Yeah.
So two things. First one, please tell me a bit about the paper that you're referring to, the name of the paper, and what on a high level what it talks about.
Yeah.
And second, it's just escaped me. I can't remember the second thing I was going to ask you, but just tell me a bit about the paper, then we can get back to that.
Okay. So the paper we did was called Made in Africa. And this is a framework to be able, and what we've set out, it's a first part of a 6-part paper where we're setting out a framework to allow thinking or discussions around being able to govern and deployment of artificial intelligence on the continent. So the idea is that we have started having conversations with different people. This is academia, private sector, government. And through those conversations, we started to deeply understand what are the levers or components that we need to think about as a continent or as peoples on the continent to make AI work best for us. And what we came up with was this 4 components, which is data and data systems, digital infrastructure, talent, and market. So the idea is to be able to set out this framework is to say, okay, we're going to start having conversations about this to be able to say, how do we inform our policymakers how we can address what successful AI deployment looks like on the continent.
Where can people find this paper?
So people can find it at qubit.africa. It's right there. And and you can download it, read it, give us some comments, send me an email or LinkedIn.
You want people to email you? I'm joking. Okay. So when all this is happening, when the tech guys are working on what they're working on, and when the policymakers are discussing to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes, what is everybody else doing? What is the rest? What are the rest of the Kenyan or African population doing?
The rest of the population needs to start experimenting with these tools. The AI tools, a lot of them, well, the chat GPTs, at least the generative AI tools, you'll find chat GPT, Google has their own, Claude AI. They are really available to be able to start playing with them and understanding how they work. Ask AI, it's sort of ask these chat GPTs and these chatbots, what can I do with what you're looking at? And that's a very great way of starting to understand it. It's like when the internet came out, start playing out, start Googling, how do I make banana bread? You might end up being the best banana bread maker. I know for a fact, like I asked Google in the early days of 2011 when they were coming out with the Android phone, I asked Google, hey, how can I write apps? I didn't know. No one was teaching it. I went to Strathmore University here. No one was teaching how to make apps. And Google taught me how to make apps, and it became a career for me.
That is so interesting. So you're using OpenAI before it was OpenAI.
Right? Exactly.
Okay. So I mean, I'm looking at the challenges here because I think maybe we're a bit in tune with looking at issues that way. Like, what are the challenges before you start looking at the opportunities? So there's lack of proper connectivity. So how do we get the message down there? And should it happen organically, or should there be an active way of educating the masses on AI and its potential rather than its harm?
It's a very good question. Organic versus, being able to push it. I think what I like about what we're trying to do with Cupid is we're trying to be catalysts. So essentially be those, what are they called? Have that catalytic effect where, for example, when you have different, I think this was the biology lesson, right? Where you have different chemicals, to be able to react well, you introduce a third element that then, makes everything come together. And that's the idea that we're trying to go with at Qubit, is that yes, the organic process is going through, but if they remain stagnant as every system is prone to do. Here I'm talking about that thermodynamics, which is a very interesting thing. If you leave a cup of hot water on a table, it is definitely going to become cold and everything. But if I'm going into quantum
see your face
physics,
lighting
right?
up.
Talking about quantum physics here. But the idea is that if you introduce a different element, and this is what we're hoping that the research can do, is that you're able to then create different outputs from that. So if we're able to help policymakers to think about what does data look like? Is there data that exists on the continent? And what are the possible risks and challenges to the kind of data that we already have? So everything from understanding how does gender affect the kind of outputs that you'll be seeing? How does privacy come into play? Because I can tell you the first thing when I showed my dad ChatGPT, he said, can you tell me who comes from my certain area, from a certain location? Like, Dad, it cannot do that.
That was Facebook and the internet.
Right?
That's what it did.
Exactly. You immediately search for yourself, and being able to safeguard those, to be able to create those kinds of safeguards, you have to understand what the data looks like. You have to understand what connectivity means in terms of access to these kinds of tools, and what kind of differences it'll make for legislators who come from Wasingishu, right? They need to understand, okay, my area has only 20% connectivity. Can I be able to vote in parliament and say, hey, we need more funding for the kind of connectivity that Nairobi enjoys or Mombasa enjoys? So those are the kinds of things that I think we're having conversations with policymakers on, that yes, the tech is there, but to take advantage of all the opportunities that are there, there's specific elements and key learnings and key things that you need to take away.
So with the papers that you're doing, I know there's the one that you've done and you're planning to do some more. What are you hoping to achieve with those?
So we're hoping to definitely educate in a massive way, to be able to put in place the kind of thinking. When a government official is talking about AI, it's very easy to talk about it in terms of just a framework. And when investors are coming in, they can be able to start thinking, okay, this is the data ecosystem, this is the talent ecosystem. We've already been talking to a lot of also development partners, how they can be able to think about it from that framework lens in terms of being able to invest as well, and catalyze what the data ecosystem looks like, what does the talent ecosystem, or what does a market ecosystem look like, and what are the kind of levers that you need to pull together. So not only educate, but also allow them to allow different actors to have almost like a playbook that you can go in and you do a plug and play. Which sector are you trying to play in? Startups. If you're a data startup, you're understanding what is my application or my role in terms of being able to build out AI applications, and what are my considerations. So just being able to do this is what we're looking to do with the 6-part paper series, is educate and be able to give people a way of thinking for AI on the continent.
Okay. So as we wind up, let me ask you, if you were to make a case for or against AI to a business leader in Africa, as your parting shot,
Yes.
what would you say? What would your pitch be?
I've had to make this case a few times, so it should be easy. I don't know why it's so hard on the hot seat. But it's a good question, because not all businesses will need AI. I have to be on at this stage. Not all businesses. Some businesses will, and it's very important to know whether you are the right business or not. Start by experimentation. Start by understanding what kind of AIs are there. Other people are using it. Just do a very quick Google search. Ask the AI to be like, hey, or the chat GPTs for our case, hey, I have a business like this. How can I use AI? What does it matter for me? If you're a bigger corporation, of course, if you're a bigger business, you can do partnerships, work with people like Qhala, right? to be able to understand, and they can do sort of the kind of like assessment that you need to have in place. And those is what I would say as my parting shot. Experiment with these tools, ask other people, and partner. It'll go far.
Is there anything I can do to tell AI that if a male counterpart is getting $3,000, I should get $3,000 as well?
Exactly. This is what we're trying to do. Yes, there's a way to tell AI to.
There's a way to tell AI.
Yeah,
we could talk about it after.
But exactly. But
Okay.
get a what is it called? A male sounding name and replace it.
Walubengo sounds male, right?
Right? Exactly.
Okay,
but
is
unfortunately,
male.
you're then double hit because then you're African, and African names also get the hit. In fact, a paper was just recently published with Stanford about that, like African Black names getting like less.
I think we need to do another series where we talk about the discriminations that are brought about by AI and how maybe we're trying to fix that.
Yeah.
I think that would be perfect.
100%.
And thank you.
No,
thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura. This has been fun.
I'm looking forward to talking to you again.
I hope so. Or an AI version of me.
No.